Some companies say that all the stuff we are doing now, it's the business of the government, and it's better for us to do money for us and not to spend
you
on
make
other
money
things.
and the government makes... No,
yes. What are the arguments opposite of it?
That's a very, very interesting question and has been addressed now for a while. Where I come out now is this. Corporations should take care of, in the CSR context, they should take care of all of their stakeholders, which includes community and all of that. When it comes to the outer circle, as it were, then maybe we have to leave it indeed to public policy and to... I mean, there's an interesting book by an American professor, Robert Reich, who is interesting man in many ways, and he came more from a left-wing part of thinking. He was, and he is, in this context, he has changed his mind. He has said, and I agree with that, in a book 2 years ago or so. He has said that to protect the common good, and one of it is the climate thing, for him, to protect the common good, that could be and should be only done by the public sector. Companies should not get involved there because that's beyond their reach anyhow. They can't do a job there. That's not. They can maybe contribute in terms of discussing issues and maybe even discussing their expertise. They can bring in their expertise. That I would think could be a valuable thing. But as an issue for them to address, I think that is beyond their reach and beyond their capabilities. So that's where I come out now.
And my last question, some people also say that companies doesn't act well in terms of CSR, and for example in other countries where they have their parts, the companies that have parts, they use cheap cheap labor and also maybe sometimes child labor.
Yes, that has been the case with the
Is it true? And
it was true. With child labor, it was true. There's no doubt about that. There's no denying because it's a fact. It was true, and people did it, and it was most probably wrong. You could make, if you wanted to, you could make one point. We all don't like child labor, and maybe it's a universal dislike. On the other hand, people in certain countries might tell you, we don't mind if a 13-year-old or 14-year-old boy does certain manual work, which is not too taxing and not too difficult for him, because he might make a couple of dollars per day, which otherwise he wouldn't have. So the question is a somewhat tricky thing, whether it can be done this way and whether he would miss school for that or not. I mean, there are things you have to weigh, but I think basically we would all be against child labor. And the other point with cheaper labor, it depends again very much on the situation. Certain people might make use of cheaper labor somewhere, but that's a tricky thing also. I mentioned the supply chain management, which could be very, very difficult to do and could actually backfire. So I'm not sure whether that's true. And the other thing I'm not so sure about is this. In our modern world, more and more, we're not there yet, but more and more do we automate everything. Everything is automated. Everything is automated by machines, right? Up to robots. And so in other words, labor is becoming less and less important. So I'm not sure what the labor content in a given product, let's say you have a given product, whatever the product is, how much labor content there still is. I'm not so sure whether it's that big, and it's probably diminishing. So I mean, it is something to be addressed. I'm not sure saying this is a non-issue, but one has to be very circumspect and careful in addressing that.
Okay. Thank you very much.